A Corbin Burnes decision is expected to be made either today or tomorrow. And surprise, surprise, the Blue Jays are favorites and one of the finalists. Yet again, will they be able to seal the deal? We'll take a look at some of the reports and much more on this episode of Jays Digest. Welcome in, everybody, to Jays Digest. I'm your host, Peter Vryonis, alongside host Nick Gosse. And it's there's no shortage of craziness at this time of year, and it's back-to-back off seasons now where the Toronto Blue Jays have been involved in just straight up madness, insanity. Call it whatever you want to call it. Otani in the previous offseason, you had Soto this offseason, and the Blue Jays have already made some subsequent moves after missing out on Soto, so it's nice to see them not sitting back on their heels, but they're not done there. And there's still a lot more that needs to be done. And Corbin Burnes has been a name that we thought they had a chance on, but then kind of backpedaled on. And now we're back in. So what's going on here? There's a lot of new news coming out about Corbin Burnes, but let's try to get through it all here.
Yeah, there's some actually interesting things going on. 'Cause you have some reporters saying that the Jays are favorites. You have Ben Nicholson and Smith playing on the more cautious side. Fans are coming at Ben Nicholson and Smith. So there's a few things to dive into here. But let's start with a report that dropped last night. I have a screenshot of the article, but essentially it says, quote, according to sources, the two teams expected to be the most aggressive on Burnes are the Blue Jays and the Giants, with Toronto widely considered the favorite. It basically says again, this is from the exact article. The two teams expected to be the most aggressive are the Jays and the Giants, with Toronto considered the favorite. The Jays were prepared to spend $700 million on Soto and were among the teams in on Fried before he went to the Yankees. And if Toronto, which of course are pending the losses of Bassett and Gosman, are following 26 campaign, are looking to spend big, Burnes may be their best and last hope. So we've seen some reports go along. We're seeing some stuff. Again, Mock Bomb, he's gotten some things right, some things wrong. Obviously, big rumor guy, Mock Bomb. He says he's an insider. Take it for a grain of salt. He's probably not it. But he's basically saying that he thinks that the Jays are going to land Corbin Burnes, that he's the favorite. So at the end of the day, Mark Feinstein, a very notable reporter, said that the Jays are aggressive and they are considered the favorite for Corbin Burnes. So, Peter, it's interesting now, and I'll get your thoughts on this before we get into some Ben Nicholson Smith stuff here. But it seems like a lot of reporters are saying the Jays are favorites for Corbin Burnes. And I think the reason is because they want to spend big, and ultimately they made some big moves yesterday, some huge splashes, and if they can go out and get Corbin Burnes and one more bat, they're in a very good spot. That being said, it's an interesting one, but to be favorites for Corbin Burnes, I'm officially on Corbin Burnes watch. No longer on Soto watch. I'm back in on Corbin Burnes watch now.
I mean, I think this is a better scenario than we had a couple of days ago because the Yankees and the Red Sox were in on him, and we're not really hearing too much buzz about those teams. But if I were the Blue Jays, I'd be worried about the Giants because they already lost Blake Snell. They're clearly wanting to spend a lot of money. They signed Willie Adames as well. So, and he's a California guy. He's from the Bay Area. So that's another advantage that might work into their favor there. So I'm not ready to call this a done deal yet. I'm not ready to say that the Jays should be favored over the Giants. And the Giants, they have struck out on so many high profile free agents. I know that we think we have it rough as Blue Jay fans, but we all remember that Aaron Judge stuff that went down.
Arson
I mean,
Judge.
arson judge, exactly. And then the off season after that, I can't really remember off the top of
A
my
lot of
head, but
guys.
they have been in on a lot of notable free agents, and they have missed out on just as many as they've been in on. So I think they're going to be very motivated in the pursuit of Burns, and they might have to overpay just for the sake of actually sealing the deal for once, because they don't do that very often. Neither did the Blue Jays, but I think considering the way that the Fried contracts have played out and the Snell contract has played out as well, you're going to have to overpay here for Burns. I'm not sure what that is. Maybe in the realm of 240, 250, but it's going to be a lot because he's a better pitcher than Max Fried. He's a better pitcher than Blake Snell, and he deserves to get more. And he's around the same age as those guys as well.
Yeah, I think he's definitely going to get 250. Seeing some things like 6 years, 210, something like that. And of course, Free got 8 years, 218. So if you're giving Burns 6 years around the same amount, maybe that would be a way to go about it. And It's interesting because Ben Nichols just spoke out on it a little bit, and I kind of want to get your thoughts on this, Peter, because it's really floating around. So he said Burnes is an awesome pitcher, position Atlanta monster. Jays have interest; he'd be a great fit. Based on where they land in the Freed sweepstakes, though, currently seems less likely about the Jays and more likely about the Giants and Red Sox, which is super interesting because he said that exactly the same time that Mark Feinsand come out and called the Jays the favorites. So he also dropped this article basically saying that they might only have $13 to $23 million to spend that's left. And then again, with that in mind, a deal with Burnes and Bregman seems less likely. I just kind of want to get your thoughts on Ben Nichols and Smith's reporting as of late because people have been very hard on him in certain ways. I honestly, at this point, kind of tend to trust Mark Feinsand a little bit more. Obviously, Ben Nichols works with Sportsnet, but I can't remember the last time he's broken some news, and it's nothing against Ben Nichols and Smith here, but no one had any inkling on a, Jimenez trade or anything like that. So, I mean, maybe he's right. Maybe they aren't going to go out and spend big on Corbin Burnes, but I think ultimately with, guys just as tuned in with Mark Feinsand and even other reporters as well, I'm going to tend to believe that the Jays are going all in here on Corbin Burnes. There's been multiple reports about it. Even though Ben Nichols and Smith says they might not have a great shot at Burnes, I think that might just be him being very, very conservative like he has been. People are going at him on Twitter. I'm just curious to see your thoughts on that.
Are we sure that's even Ben Nicholson Smith answering and not some
Robot, exactly.
yeah, yeah, well, that's the way that he tends to answer these questions, so I'm not really reading too heavily into it. But if that's true, if the Blue Jays have around $20 million to spend, which is what we've been discussing, Nick, I don't think they should get Corbin Burnes. And don't get me wrong, the guy's probably the best free agent that is still available out there. But you need a bat. You need a bat. Absolutely. I don't think your rotation could use some help. It could use an extra piece in there, but it doesn't have to be an ace.
Yeah.
So if you have $20 million to spend, then what are we doing here? What you're going to go get a reclamation project bat? Hope that they turn it around. Jorge Polanco is going to be your big offensive signing of the offseason. I I mean if this is what they're operating with, why would you allocate all of your resources on a position that you don't really need to allocate those resources to? And it's no disrespect or slight to Burnes. I think he would be by far and away the best pitcher on this team. But then again, you look at your rotation, you have innings eaters, you have guys that have given you a chance to win games in the past couple of years. They haven't been the issue. It's the offense that has been the issue. So if that is what you're working with, 15 to 23 million or 13 to 23 million, then go spend it on a bat or multiple bats if you can, because your lineup right now, not good enough. It wasn't good enough with Horwitz. It's definitely not good enough now with Andres Jimenez. So go spend on Santander, on Teoscar Hernandez. Do what you got to do, but use whatever money that you have remaining if there is a limit to how much you can spend on your offense. I don't think they need pitching.
Yeah.
Not in the starting rotation, at least.
Yeah, if it's going to cost them a bat, they'd obviously prefer a bat. That being said, you can see an exception could be made for Burnes or Bregman from the baseball ops team if they go that route. So, I mean, maybe that's good. That's what we've been clamoring about the whole time. Go deep dive into that extra bit of money you have. Get Corbin Burnes and then get Anthony Santander. But if you have to pick between a couple, I'd rather them get Santander and then one other, maybe even one other bullpen piece and one other hitter. We're seeing some interest in some other guys, which we'll cover later today in a stream or a video. But ultimately, I hope they go out and get Corbin Burnes. He's unbelievable. And again, I gonna trust Feinsand here, and no slight against Ben Nicholson Smith, but I don't know. Things were going a little bit crazy on Twitter with him as of late. I think he's a little bit too conservative these days because after the whole Ohtani stuff with John Heyman or not John Heyman, John Morosi, they don't want to get things wrong. But at the end of the day, no Jays reporters had any inkling or any hint of Andres Jimenez. So who knows what Ross Atkins is cooking? Because you would have assumed they would have had some sort of inkling. Peter, I was discussing this with my friend. No one had anything about Jimenez or even Horwitz being traded. So I think if any more moves continue to come here, I wouldn't be surprised if it's something that, Ben Nicholson Smith hadn't spoken about. And he made a lot of articles. And I'll tell you one thing, Jimenez was not in one of them. And to be fair, not to his credit, no reporter had the Jays making that trade. So things happen fast this time of year.
And at the end of the day, the team is not going to leak information to the sports writers, and
it'll be other teams.
They could be as tapped in as they want, but those conversations go on behind closed doors with a select few people. There are no scouts in those rooms. There are no sports writers pinning their ears against the door. Like that's not what happens. It is maybe Mark Shapiro, maybe Ross Atkins and John Schneider, or someone else in the front office, James Click. It's probably a handful of people that are in a room making these decisions. Of course, with some external help, they're going through their evaluations, which may be a scout made. They're going through some other information that another member of the front office gave to them. So obviously, a lot more hands are involved in the decisions nowadays. But at the end of the day, it comes down to a few guys or a few front office people just making these decisions, and no one really has any sources unless there is information being leaked from the agents or from the free agents themselves. Like it is hard to get pieces or tidbits of that information because it's just not easily accessible. So I'm not gonna really go out there and slam Ben Nicholson Smith for not saying anything because he just doesn't know. He just doesn't know, and he's not going to spew out a bunch of nonsense just so he can get some clicks on his story, because that is how you get fired. If the team that or if the entity that owns the team also owns your network, that's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, I agree. Respect to Ben Smith. He's very conservative, and it wouldn't hurt for him to throw some, rumors out there once in a while to help feed some narratives. But I'm sure a lot of
Right.
fans would love that after what happened with John Morosi. But yeah, I agree. Ultimately, it's gonna be hard to see what comes. Stuff just happens fast. We saw Jimenez yesterday, and we'll keep you up to date with all of it. So make sure to hit the subscribe button, and hopefully they make either a big move in the pitching department or just give me Anthony Santander or Teoscar Hernandez at this point. I'll be happy with that. See you later.